Hello, everyone. Matt here, as usual, along with Christian. Unfortunately, his webcam isn't working. It's on the fritz, so you can't have his picture thingy up. And of course, the lighting is weird with me, so I'm going to look like the sun is reflecting off my very white forehead.
Root for white foreheads.
You don't even have a white forehead. You're black.
I know. I'm just, trying to empower you, man, as a brother does.
Yes, because I, as a middle class American white man, who is also straight, desperately need power.
Hey, I don't know.
Just a few personal updates before we get started. This is IBC root beer, not beer. So all of you trolls are going to be like, hey, he's drinking a Corona. No, I'm not. I don't even know what beer tastes like. And Christian also got himself stabbed, so that's fun.
Yay for stabbings!
I literally got home from work at 9 last night, and we have this group chat of old APFP members, and I just saw like this stuff about him being in the hospital. I'm like, what's wrong? And he's just like, oh yeah, I got stabbed. And I was like, oh, okay.
Just in case you're wondering or you're worried.
Well, you just said stabbed, so I thought you meant like someone ran up to you and was just like, eh.
It felt that way, Matt. It felt that way.
No, it was just a rusty nail. So that which is always a safe thing to stab yourself on.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, let's get started. So I've just been Trump. Let me just put it that way. Trump. That has been the discourse and the political discourse for pretty much this entire election.
Yep.
And so one thing, I have a lot of liberal friends, naturally, because I am a young person. I am also considerably liberal, so I am bound to surround myself with like-minded people. And it doesn't help on social media when, I'll tend to comment on, star, favorite, retweet, blah, 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 like-minded people, and that just continues because of algorithms to fill my newsfeed, and I don't really get another perspective. So it's always refreshing to have a different perspective. And something interesting that coincidentally one of my liberal friends shared was actually an article in the American Conservative, which, as the name suggests, I don't regularly read.
Yeah.
And the title of this, because, I'll probably have the... What the hell is going on? Oh, yeah. For some reason, it's got this weird server shit going on, so it does that. So if that happens when you click on this article, don't be alarmed.
Yeah.
But it is an article by, his name is Rod Dreher, I believe, from a week or two ago, called Trump Tribune of Poor White People. And basically what it is, it's an interview with someone who is from, for all intents and purposes, and it even says so in the article, a hillbilly background. Someone who grew up as a poor, working class white person living in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
That kind of area. And basically explains in a few ways why so many of the people that fall into that demographic in one way or another support Donald Trump. And the one point, did you get to read the Christian? Did you get to read the Christian article? Did you get to read the article, Christian?
No, I've been out about all day.
Okay.
That's if you read it anyway.
Yeah, I put that in the doc, the Google Doc that we have shared for this stuff a few days ago, and he completely forgot about it till just today when I reminded him. So
yeah, pretty much.
He has an excuse.
Yay for excuses. This is a yay for everything kind of episode for me.
Woo! Death by taxation. I don't know. Anyway, you guys can go ahead and read the whole article. It's a long article. Like it's like an Atlantic-sized article. even like bigger than that. And by that I mean like the Atlantic magazine, not the ocean.
Yeah.
That
would have been oddly acceptable to point it out that way.
But anyway, so and the interesting thing is that the person being interviewed, his name is J.D. Vance. He wrote Hillbilly Elegy, a memoir of a family and a culture in crisis. And J.D. Vance actually graduated from Harvard. Sorry, not Harvard. What am I saying? Yale Law School.
Yeah.
And basically, what he said, a big thing that he said was something that really pissed off people that he knew and his family, part of this hillbilly culture, quote unquote, was that when it came to mainstream media, that's a big target. It's been a big target of conservatives for a while, and especially Trump, is the treatment of so-called, so perceived hillbillies by that media.
Yeah.
In that, you know, when it comes to political correctness that the mainstream media often uses, you can't say the N-word.
Yeah.
You can't say anything derogatory about women, Latinos, anybody.
Yeah.
But it's all right to make fun of hillbillies.
Yeah.
You know, it's all right to be like, oh, no, leave him out the ledge. Like,
yeah.
you know, or the southern draw like that.
Yeah.
You guys get the idea.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to this whole issue of how different demographics interact. Thank you.
Yep.
Especially among my liberal friends, it's always, you know, there's white privilege, which I do believe exists, and the people who are being downtrodden are women and Latinos and blacks and you name it.
Yeah.
But the reason why this caught my attention was because these people aren't necessarily being downtrodden on because they're white.
Yeah.
They're being downtrodden on because they're poor.
Yeah.
Which would make you think that they wouldn't put their faith in a billionaire or in the Republican Party, which tends to favor upper bracket, upper
even
bracket.
America's poor respects wealth, I suppose, is a way of viewing it.
Well, what the really big thing is that, you know, for the people standing up for social justice,
yeah,
almost always are talking about how that affects different
minorities,
races and genders. Yeah, especially races. I other than Bernie Sanders' candidacy, honestly, and the last, you know, ever since I started paying attention to politics, which has been 8 years now, I've almost never heard anybody say, "Let's help the people, you know, the poor people in the South."
Yeah.
You know, just as, like, obviously not verbatim, but something to that effect.
Yeah.
And another thing that Vance pointed out was that they don't want handouts.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately has become of a lot of social programs in the United States, is that it's basically just turned to handouts rather than with the New Deal of trying to prop people up and then
it's not like a long-term actual plan. It's just, let's just send them money so they don't starve and call it a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. Just because, you know, I already knew that you don't just support Trump because you're a racist. Like, that is way too simplistic. Yeah. But this offered new insight. I don't know. I've been talking for a lot. Christian, do you want to throw something in?
So I find it shows it doesn't show a lack, but it shows an interesting misunderstanding of what you mean when you say white privilege, which is something I've found a lot because I have a lot of white friends, obviously, so I don't really have a choice in this matter. And it's this idea that, you know, just because white privilege exists, that I'm saying, well, white people can't have it hard. I'm more so saying that a person of a minority in the same position as you would have extra difficulties to try and overcome. That doesn't, and as I said, that's not to say that you don't have a difficult situation that we shouldn't be helping you. I'm just pointing out that fact. I'm just going to let it sit there and see what you do with it, really, to be completely honest. So that's something I notice when I see that. But nonetheless, it's an interesting point because I don't think it's part of the conversation we have a lot. So here's an interesting question I have then for you. Do you think it's fine to mock a culture so long as you're divorcing that from race?
So first, I just want to say real quickly, when I explain white culture, at least, or sorry, white privilege.
Yeah.
Little slip there. Like I did to my friend the other night, who I was having a similar discussion with about, is that it's not necessarily we're treating white people better.
Yeah.
It's that they're getting the expected treatment, what you should be receiving, like what anybody should be receiving. It's that other people, you know, kind of as you said, who are Black, Latino, or a woman or something like that, are getting lesser treatment than normal.
Yeah.
But to the Christian's question, which was which remind me of it again, please.
Do you think it's okay to make fun of someone divorced of, you know, their culture and all that? I mean, sorry, to make fun of someone's culture divorced of race.
I think, you know, you have to learn to laugh at yourself. I'm a big proponent of that. One of my favorite presidents, John F. Kennedy, his big thing was self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
I really admired that about him. I really try to emulate that myself.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, if you learn to laugh at yourself, then it becomes, you know, you just don't seem like mean-spirited when you make jokes about other people. And it's usually better to make jokes about yourself than about other people because you're the victim, not anybody else. So you're not hurting anybody else's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess I don't know. It's hard to say for me because now that I've read this article, now that I understand the situation a little better,
Yeah.
it's almost I don't want to make an exemption.
Yeah.
For hillbillies, I guess you'd say,
Yeah.
which we'll just use as the term because that's the term that's used in the article, not to be derogatory in any way. That's just the term that's used.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, well, economically they may be suffering, which is completely valid, and you know, I'm among them in a way. Like I'm suffering. I'm a white person, and I'm economically suffering.
Yeah.
But really, do you really go out, you know, every day and see a cop and feel fear?
Yeah.
No, most of them see a cop and they, hey, that's Jerry, you know, like that's my buddy or that's my cousin or yeah, maybe I might not know that officer, but I know there's a decent chance he's not going to shoot me.
Yeah.
Just because of the color of my skin. But the problem with that is that a lot of those people, the reason why they're so hateful, the reason why they have such this visceral response is because they're uneducated.
Yeah.
And because, you know, Democrats love them. They say, you know, let's fix education. And they do a good job of that, trying to say, you know, but let's help poorer communities, especially black communities, because they need a leg up because of the hundreds of years of discrimination.
Yeah.
But really, education in the U.S. hasn't improved that much.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say it's gone down. Even in the state of Massachusetts, the leader in the U.S. for education is not that good.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really up, as much as I don't want to say Democrats should be appealing to these people. I think Bernie Sanders definitely did in the campaign a good job of that, because his message was, yes, let's pay special attention to some minority groups because there is specific discrimination against them, and we need to address that. But that's not the only discrimination. The economy overall is unfair.
Yeah.
That was a good message. Unfortunately, it didn't get out to a lot of people, especially minorities that vote in the Democratic primaries. Unfortunate for Bernie, but it's reality. So, I don't know. That's kind of long-winded.
I think it's interesting you bring up the New Deal, because I remember Sam Cedar actually did a video about this, how the Democrats had abandoned, because that's a story. That was a time when that was the left, where those kind of people were the left, and they abandoned that for people like you, effectively. So I think that's perhaps part of the problem, because they feel like there's no one to turn to but the Republicans, because the Democrats seem to be, they feel to them that by the Democrats appealing to the minorities, they're not helping them, as if the two can be removed.
Well, it really goes back to the, I guess, the last shift in politics, which was the 60s with the Civil Rights Movement. Because when the Civil Rights Act was passed, it was pushed by two Democratic presidents, Lyndon Johnson and JFK, and opposed by mainly Republicans like Barry Goldwater, at least in the South. It more went on regional lines than party lines. But they saw that, up until then, the Democrats had been the champions of the South and for racism and segregation and whatnot and slavery for over 100 years, and they felt like that was a stab in the back. And so maybe consciously that still isn't in the minds of a lot of Southerners, but there's still that lingering, these guys betrayed us. And now it kind of feeds into the, wait, why are you giving special treatment to black people, or at least what they see as special treatment?
And it's just it's people voting against their own interests, and it's kind of sad. But you know what?
Well, that's
I don't know what to tell you to that.
Well, that's because honestly, the Republican message, which unfortunately is to some extent right, as I begin to understand, is the Democrats don't care about you. They care about the people in cities. They care about urban areas where they tend to win more. They care about that stuff. They don't care about country people. They don't care about rural people. They just want the votes of those people. And unfortunately, they're not entirely wrong.
And I think that has in part comes down to how the U.S. does politics. Because I find it's something Jeffrey and I commented on when we were covering the Canadian election, was when you're saying Canada, who's winning what, you don't say so-and-so won the black vote. You'd never say that. You never say so-and-so won the Aboriginal vote or the Chinese vote. So you're not even, to a Canadian who's looking at their politics, I don't think Canadians generally look at it on racial lines, whereas the U.S. media does. That's like the first thought. So I'm just left to wonder if maybe that's part of it, is the Democrats or the entire U.S. has internalized this concept, and it's detrimental for everybody.
I honestly, you could be hitting the nail right on the head with that. I don't think, now, of course, this, like, as you kind of alluded to, this brings in the only reason why there's race problems in America is because the media is perpetuating it. No, there are race problems in America because people are racist.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that. I'm just speaking to the fact that maybe the way you view your politics at the current moment in time has something to do with that.
Well, no. That's what I was going to get to, and you're right on that. Is that because of the centuries-old racial split? There has been that as you say, that internalization of where demographics are going, because that has been a big part of party shifts. Like I said, in the 60s, for instance, it went blacks up until that point tended to vote Republican. And then because of the Civil Rights Act and the whole shift in the party, in party affiliation, party makeup, more and more black people started to vote Democratic.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's really based on that, and it's very, very unfortunate because we shouldn't be looking at the stuff as race. We should be looking at this as people are being treated unfairly, and here's how we need to address it.
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, as long as the reason why, and this is what, okay, and this is why I really don't like Hillary Clinton being the Democratic nominee. Not only because I disagree with her on a few issues, and because I think she's a bit
in a sense, I guess.
Huh?
Nothing. I'm gonna stop.
I was
making something I was thinking about when you said that. But
well, I'm just saying, like, the reason, you know, not only because I disagree with her on a few issues, and because I think she's a bit of a sketchy character.
Yeah.
She definitely, even though she's from Illinois and then Arkansas.
Yeah.
Even though New York is kind of her adopted home state.
Yeah.
She definitely has that northern sort of almost New England, even though New York isn't in New England. But, you know, northeastern scholarly snootiness about her. At least that I think a lot of Southerners would see it as, you know, oh, you know, of course I'm for gay rights because intelligent people are. Like, people bring up all the stuff about, oh, the highly educated are voting for Hillary. Would you look at that? Trump voters are stupid.
Yeah.
They're not stupid. It's because he's speaking to their concerns. Yeah, he's a bad guy. And it's bad that they're ignorant. And it's bad that they're undereducated. And it's bad that they're voting for Trump. They're not stupid. They didn't get the education. And they fear intelligence, unfortunately. They fear a higher level of intelligence because it's intimidating.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to say, oh, you know, to sound snooty and be like, Southerners are dumb. No, I completely understand it. I'm intimidated when there are people who are smarter than me.
Yeah.
And it makes it even worse when you disagree on an issue and they basically act like they're superior because they're more intelligent or because they have a higher education than yourself. So I don't think it's much of a mystery why a lot of those people are voting for Donald Trump and not voting for Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And have been voting for Republicans for so long. It's not the Koch brothers' fault. It's not, I mean, they do have, you know, an axe to grind in American politics, and they're not good players. But in this sense, it's because we look down on them. It's because, you know, us with our Harvard and Yale and whatever degrees are looking down at these Southerners who maybe didn't even finish high school or just went to community college and saying, "Oh, look at you! Of course you're not for gay rights because you're stupid." Like, we don't say that verbatim, but that's how they perceive it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's a very legitimate complaint to have.
Yeah.
J.D. Vance alludes to that in his article. He says when he was at Yale, he said he was from the South and whatnot, or no, he was in the military. He was in the military, as a lot of Southerners tend to, many more Southerners than Northerners tend to be in the military. And a girl who was Northerner in his class turned to him and said, "Really? You know, you seem so nice and amiable. You know, you don't seem like you have the character of someone in the military."
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of implying, maybe not consciously, but implying that Southern people and military people tend to be jerks.
Yeah.
Or you know, like, stone cold.
Yeah.
Like, of course I'd get mad. I'd get offended if someone said that to me and they had, you know, a GD from Yale Law and was running for president and being like, "Oh, you're in the military, but you seem so nice." Or, "Oh, you're from the South, you seem so educated." Like, it's, you know, as much as we talk about the subtle sexism and the subtle racism that permeates through our culture, there's also a lot of subtle intellectualism, or if that's a word, or I don't know if you call it ableist or whatever, but you get what I'm saying. People looking down on other people because of where they're from or because of their education level. And I think if we stopped doing that and did what Bernie did and said, let's just make America better, let's make sure everybody rises up, we'd win a lot more elections.
Yeah.
And when I say we, I mean Democrats. But end of rant.
End of rant. Yeah, I think that's a good place to end that.
All right, I actually want to take that and make a video out of it because I think this has been a really, really important discussion.
Yeah.
But speaking of Donald Trump, okay, apparently this is like the month for everybody to come to Cape Cod. And I don't just mean tourists. I mean politicians too. The Obamas just came in. I actually got to see Air Force One land, which was pretty cool. Because the Air Force Base they land at is right next to my house. The Obamas are coming for their annual week on Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was here yesterday for a fundraiser in Osterville, and in Provincetown in like a week or two, Hillary's going to be there for a fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
But that's besides the point. Over 200 people showed up to his fundraiser, Donald Trump's fundraiser in Osterville, to protest it.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go because I was working, but I was really impressed because that's a lot of people, especially for the Cape, which isn't that densely populated, at least with year-round residents. But I'll link the article in the Cape Cod Times in the description once this is over. But one of my friends, and I mentioned this to Christian earlier, one of my friends was asking, what did this do? Because this didn't put a dent in his bigotry at all. And he was actually at the house of, okay, so, when you think about the Koch brothers, you think about Charles and David Koch. Well, they have a third brother named William Koch. It was actually at his house in Osterville, which is pretty weird. I never thought a Koch brother would live around here. That's pretty interesting. But what are your thoughts? Because a lot of Trump supporters were like, "Oh, why bother protests? Blah blah blah. You're not going to make a difference." And now, of course, one of my friends was saying, "All right, that was cool, but what did that do?"
Yeah.
What do you think? Because I don't know. I don't know what to say.
Well, look, I don't know. If you say that towards every protest, then what's the point of protesting at any point? Protests generally don't lead to direct results right away. It's more of a send a message kind of deal about, we don't like X. It's something I heard a lot. I remember when Chris used to be more right-wing. He was always complaining about why is Black Lives Matter or proto Black Lives Matter before they actually called themselves that, protesting, like it's just getting in the way. They're just being an annoyance to the public. It's not helping their cause. And all I could say was, well, what do you think the point of protesting is? You're trying to be annoying. You're trying to be unpleasant. Trying to get in the way, and that's how you get people to listen to you. And, if you can make someone think more critically, I suppose, about Trump in some way, to make people aware of the fact that, not everyone necessarily likes this guy, well, then maybe that's all you needed to do. So, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about someone saying, oh, what did that achieve? I'm like, well, what do you think the point of protesting is? Because maybe we disagree on that concept.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess on its face, it's like, wait, we're just going to stand around here for 2 hours and chant?
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to make Donald Trump drop out of the presidential race, or that's not going to make him tone down, which is an especially good point for Donald Trump. Like, it could affect Hillary if there were, a bunch of protests, but he's not your average politician. He's not going to back down because people are like, hey, we don't like what you're saying. He feeds off of that.
Yeah.
that's actually, he does the exact opposite. So, I wasn't able to attend. I really wish I had, because it actually looked like it was a good time. There was a lot of people that showed up. I'm
Yeah.
gonna actually have a few links down to videos of that. But yeah, I guess I have to agree with you because there's not a lot that unfortunately that 200 people on Cape Cod can do because it's not like he's going to carry the state of Massachusetts anyway.
Yeah.
He has no delusions that he's going to, as much as he might say stupid shit like I'm going to win the Latino vote.
Yeah.
I think he's smart enough to know he wouldn't be able to win Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So, and again, it was a fundraiser. It's not like it was a rally.
Yeah.
Because he knows that would have been pointless, even on Cape Cod.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to go there just to say, hey, I don't like Trump, get out of here.
Which is effectively what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with wanting to say that's why I did this.
Yeah, because you're literally in my backyard. Arsterville's right down the street from my house. Yeah. I'd be like, shoot, this is my house. This is my house. Get out. But you get the point. I don't want someone as hateful and spiteful as you and who incites the same to be here.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed that you guys could probably see if you see the Facebook post about it from the Cape Cod Times, I was very disappointed in a lot of the comments. Because a lot of the comments...
Oh, comments.
Yeah, comments.
I said coats, and I was like, why were you critiquing their coats? That's a very random thing to have a problem with.
Your trench coats look awful.
Okay. Whatever, man.
But I'm not... I may be a bit flamboyant, but I'm not a fashionista.
Yeah.
Anyway. A lot of them were like, yeah, of course you're protesting Trump, but what about Hillary and Benghazi and blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
I don't care.
Hillary's not gonna be here.
Yeah.
So there's no point in you saying that.
Yeah.
It's not like this is a fucking... It's not like this is a debate. It's not like they're having a debate at Osterville. Both of them are going to be there, and you just decide to protest Trump.
Yeah.
No, only he's going to... Yeah, Hillary's going to be here in a week or two. She's going to be up in Provincetown. But first of all, Provincetown is a good, 50 miles from Osterville, and it's also massive time difference from, that day to a week or two later. So I don't really get the point. Were they supposed to also go out and have Never Hillary signs too? That wouldn't make any sense. And then they're and then some people were like, oh, well, why bother? Why bother? Kind of like the discussion we were having earlier. And I'm like, all right, well, if you think this is a waste of our time, why tell us not to do it? We clearly disagree on whether or not Trump is a nice guy.
Yeah.
So why would you try to stop us from what you think is a waste of our time? Unless you actually think it isn't a waste of our time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I see, when it comes to people, at least on the Cape, who support Trump, with the exception of a few people, because I know they're economically downtrodden, and so I understand that. But there are a lot of, big money people like Lil Coke who are supporting Trump, and I'm like, what? Okay. That does... what is it? What do you think is going to happen? I don't... What? Not to mention all the stuff that... almost half the stuff that they were bitching about Hillary is... And this is what I really don't like about a lot of the criticism of Hillary Clinton, is that almost none of it is substantive, and none of it is accurate.
Funny, because there's a lot of totally valid ways to criticize Hillary, but...
Exactly. The same thing with Obama. They're just like, Obama's a Muslim.
Yeah.
Okay, well, first of all, that's not true, and second of all, okay.
If he was, then what's that do for us?
okay, cool, first Muslim president, but like that's a big step forward, especially after 9/11. But so soon after 9/11, but
Okay.
okay. And then and then it's but then there are other people who are like, well, he promised to close Guantanamo Bay and he hasn't yet. That's that's concerning. Okay, that's a decent criticism. It's not like you can't find video of him saying, I'm going to close Guantanamo Bay in the first 100 days of my office, of me being president. There is video of him saying that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you noticed, that never happened.
Yeah. That is true.
So, and same thing with Hillary. Same thing with Hillary. Oh, Benghazi. Yeah. Okay, well, 7 House investigations have said that there's no evidence of any wrongdoing on her part or the president's part.
Yeah.
And then other people, then liberals or progressives such as myself were like, oh, well, she takes a lot of big money donations, and, back in as early as 2002, she said unequivocally that marriage is between a man and a woman.
Yeah.
That's pretty concerning to me. Yeah, that's a valid criticism, which is why I don't understand why people just have to take this stuff that is completely unproven, and that's their criticism. But with real criticisms, there's nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty obvious. I don't think they dislike the things you would dislike. Like it's something I go back to a lot with what I realized when I talked to Jason Velli once. You'd be fascinated. Like he said, I don't think money in politics is a problem. I actually think money is free speech. I don't have an issue with them doing that. I'm like, like just like general like corruption things, you would say that's a problem. He's like, that's not really a problem, though. I've come to realize that's the position. I find that horrifying. It's the same thing in the conservative friend I always bring up, who you have now met, which is kind of sad. She's always like, well, I don't like. I'll bring up to her because a big thing in Canada is more so the revolving door than necessarily just campaign finance. I would say like that's a problem, and she's like, but is it really? I'm like, so I think that's why. It's just things you would consider valid criticisms. They're like, but is it really a valid criticism? And you're like, oh, okay. That's worrisome. So I think that's more so it is. I think it's more so a problem with the Republicans more so than perhaps the conservatives here. It's just they've been conditioned to think things you would consider a problem aren't really a problem.
I honestly think part of it is that they actually don't mind most of the policies that they supported. Bill Clinton, for instance. Bill Clinton is despised on the right. Like, probably, maybe even more so than Hillary Clinton. Like, just despised.
Yeah.
Well, he deregulated the banking industry. He made cuts to entitlements. He did a bunch of relatively conservative things. Why don't you like him? And I think it also goes to the point that a lot of the reason why a lot of conservatives don't like the Clintons is because they're Democrats who win.
Yeah.
Like, there are Democrats like Michael Dukakis, Walter Mondale, Jimmy Carter. Conservatives don't like them, but when you bring them up, it's not as visceral as when you bring up the Clintons. And that's because the Clintons win. And they get stuff done.
They don't like that.
Yeah, especially those who tend to be more libertarian and Tea Party, who are like, we don't want the government doing anything. So if you actually get stuff done, whatever that stuff is, regardless of what that stuff is, we don't like it.
Yeah,
because it's the government doing shit.
I always find that a funny position, but anyway, I find that a hilarious position.
So do I.
Like, even if you were libertarian, wouldn't you want someone who, like, rolls back, like, like the militarization of, like, the public space? Like, that would be getting stuff done.
I think that's because that goes to our sort of fetishization of gun culture, but I don't know.
That might be true. I find that funny, though.
Yeah, it is amusing to me too. It's like, I get if you don't like the government that much. I frankly don't either.
Mm-hmm.
But why do you want to like dismantle it?
Yeah.
Like, isn't the solution to make government better? Because
Well,
the government's going to be around no matter what you do. If it isn't, that's something called chaos.
hey, you just don't. Jetpacks, man. Without government, we would have jetpacks. You forget that.
Yeah, but Al Gore created the internet.
That's a liberal lie, man.
I love how people still use that against him. They're like, oh, Al Gore said he created the internet. He never said that.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things where it's like you cherry pick what the person is saying, like you take a quote out of context. He
Yeah.
never like there has never been a string of words of Al Gore saying I created the internet.
Yeah.
It's just that he was like, I was on the Senate committee that approved funding for the project that eventually became the internet.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. Anyway, let's get on to the topics that you wanted to bring up before we have to close out this hour or so of us yammering.
So the first one I wanted to bring up, I got really into that quite fast. I'm actually a little bit worried. The first one I wanted to bring up was
really excited.
Yeah, the first one I wanted to bring up was I was listening to CBC as a left-wing Canadian does, and they were discussing the Olympics and, well, basically how horrible Rio has been and how horrible basically the last 3 Olympics have been for corruption and displacement of people, missing money. It goes on. So they were proposing a few different ways to choose Olympic cities so that you avoid having situations like Rio where you end up with the Olympics in it. It's similar to what's going on with FIFA World Cup in Oman. I think that's where it is. I might be wrong. It might be the UAE, actually. That would make more sense. And South Africa with FIFA. They were suggesting, why don't we just keep hosting the Olympics in cities that have already hosted it, already have the athletes' villages, already have the facilities. Just like do a rotating list of like Salt Lake City, Vancouver, London, and let's say, was it Kyoto where they had the 1998 Olympics? I don't remember.
Honestly, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I don't care that much about the Olympics because of said corruption.
Yeah, so I found that an interesting point for discussion, at least. Like, what's a long-term fix to the Olympics? Insofar that, choose it, the Olympics is going to countries that don't have the logistics to host it, hence they have to spend massive amounts of their very limited funds to build all of these facilities for the Olympics, these multi-million-dollar facilities. I like the idea of having a rotating list of cities. Ooh, that's not good. I like the idea of having a rotating list of cities. I find that very appealing. I do also like the concept of potentially, one of the hosts suggested, I found it interesting, I'm not sure how I feel about it actually, was she suggested, why don't we, instead of having the Olympics in a country, say, you know what's popular here? Fencing's popular in Italy. Fencing is popular nowhere else other than Italy. Why don't we just have fencing always in Italy?
I don't know. That sounds like a good idea. And by the way, just as a side note, the 1998 Olympics were held in Nagano, Japan.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just become so disenthralled with the whole Olympic thing. Number one, because I don't really like sports that much anyway. And I'm just being honest. Like, I only really like basketball, and that's about it. I kind of like baseball. That's it.
But you like 2 sports. That's liking sports.
Yeah, but they don't play those at the Olympics that much, so I don't care.
But Olympic basketball. US is pretty good.
But I mean, really, like you're gonna. Okay, what country is basketball? What countries is basketball big in? The United States. Other countries, not really.
It's basically watch the U.S. curb stomp various small Eastern European states for hours.
Exactly. Well, it was like I forget how many years ago, but there was like a big news thing because I don't know, Massachusetts news is weird,
Yeah.
and they're covering how American football team, the Patriots out of Boston, were playing American football with a British team, and they absolutely freaking pummeled them.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, because American football is, guess what? Only popular in the United States of America. Shocker.
So basically, the U.S. has to start liking sports that it's not good at, or isn't the only one that it's good at.
Exactly. And I'm honestly kind of surprised baseball isn't that much bigger because, I don't know. I mean, not that I'm a big baseball fan, but I don't know. It seems like a sport that the rest of the world would like. I guess they're too caught up with cricket. But anyway, like, not to mention most of like the big events are like pole vaulting and that stuff, and I'm like, all right, that's not really exciting. I'm tall.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me, but like use me as a pole vault, that will be fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm not really that qualified to be talking on this. Not to mention I'm also an 18-year-old with no background in how the Olympics work other than public information.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's not a horrible idea because
Which one are you supporting here? I'm just wondering.
the one that you said about hosting, you know, if there's fencing big in Italy or American football big in America, then let's have it there.
Yeah.
Because it's still the nations of the world coming together.
True.
It's not like, oh yeah, we're gonna have fencing in Italy, but only Italians can play.
Although that would be funny.
Well, that would defeat the purpose.
That would defeat the purpose.
But that's not what's being suggested. What's being suggested is just for the sake of convenience and the sake of lack of corruption and whatnot.
Yeah.
Let's just have it where those sports are big, and those sort of events are big. I think that's not a. I think that's a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm. I think it is too. That's why I'm. The only thing would be then you have to. I suppose really, if back to our fencing example, if it was really big in Italy, they're all going to have fencing facilities. I suppose is the concept. I just say this. I hadn't really seriously considered it until you said you supported it, and I was like, "Huh, interesting. I didn't think you'd like it." But now that I think about it, like as I said, you got to play sports where they're popular. Because I was watching the women's rugby, and you have like the amazing New Zealand women's rugby team, and they're playing in front of an empty crowd, and you're like, that is horrible. There's no way that should be happening. A team of this caliber should play in front of an empty crowd. I don't know. I find that an interesting concept because Rio's had a lot of problems.
Yeah,
they've got lots of problems. we gotta ban the Olympics until we figure out what's going on. Is what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is that we just got to stop everything before so we can figure out what's going on. All right?
Yeah.
All right.
You just got to figure out what's going on.
And you know what? You know what? This is America. We have the greatest figure-it-outers in the entire world. China has better figure-it-outers, but we got the best.
We got the best.
We got the best figure-it-outers.
Yeah.
Some of them are working for my campaign. One of them is me.
One of them is me.
Now, I don't know what the Olympics are, and I can't figure them out, but I got people who know. I watch Glenn Beck. He knows what he's talking about. He's big in the Olympics.
Glenn Beck is the Olympics.
That's so funny because I could just, like, not to poke fun at his weight because he is a little bit overweight. Like, he's got, kind of a beer belly.
Yeah.
But he's also, like, I mean, he just sits, at a desk and talks the whole day. So I'm guessing he doesn't get a lot of exercise, much like myself.
Yeah.
So I can just see him, like, carrying the torch and just, like, every mile just having to, like, to stop going, like, just wheezing. really hard and like having to relight the torch like 15 times, and then like finally getting to the end and like keeling over and dying because it's just so exhausting. But anyway, anyway, it's like the Olympics are canceled because he is the Olympics. So, but anyway, uh, I mean, another thing to consider is, as you said, playing in front of an empty crowd. A
Yeah.
lot of people would love the chance just to go to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Like that would be an amazing, sort of an amazing opportunity. So you're going to get a lot more people be able to come if you have it in a bunch of different cities at the same time.
Yeah. A lot more people would have the chance to go. Man, it's a better idea than I thought. Okay.
Actually, an even better idea. I don't know if there's 200 and whatever sports, but for all the countries that participate in the Olympics, what if there's just a competition in every country?
Yeah.
That's an idea. I mean,
well, would you want a competition in like, it's North Korea?
well, that's the thing is that I said almost like,
yeah,
let's have a soccer match in Somalia. What are we going to use for the ball? Bullets? No, thanks. We're gonna use a tire from an old government truck that got run down 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but like in relatively safe spaces.
Yeah, it's
really relatively safe.
It's exciting.
So let's not have it in Detroit. But
yeah.
I think that would be interesting because everybody from every country has a chance to be able to go into an Olympic event.
Yeah.
Granted, it's probably going to be tickets are still going to be somewhere in the thousands of dollars, but I mean, at least there's that opportunity there.
Yeah. Are the Olympic tickets really like that expensive?
I'd assume. I mean, and it probably already, another big problem I think with the Olympics is the housing of everybody. Because you have to buy out basically every hotel in the host city.
Well, they make. Oh yeah. As far as like people who are coming to the Olympics, but as far as they tend to make a village for the athletes. I thought you were referring to that for a second. But
no. I mean like the people, because it's not like there's a bunch of people in Rio, a bunch of residents of Rio who are going to be like, oh, I'm going to go see the Olympics. They're going to be like, oh, I'm going to go see if I can scrounge up a fucking rat to eat.
I don't think Brazil's that poor, although it might be completely. Actually, yeah, they might be that poor. I really don't.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with what's been going on with the Olympics and as well as the corruption in their government.
Yeah.
I like how like every time I use profanity, like the viewer count goes up. That's pretty interesting, and I apologize for doing that. It just slips out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it's again, tickets are still probably going to be through them, but that's every sporting event, and it might depend on the location. If there's a game in a poorer country such as, I hate to pick on Ethiopia, but like Ethiopia, and there's a game there, maybe it's not that expensive because it's a relatively poor area. I don't know. Another thing I'd also like to see is, I get that having it in cities makes sense because it's a hub, but honestly, that is so inconvenient, especially if you're having it in like big Western countries or any country for that matter that has major metropolitan areas. Because that was talk in Boston because obviously Boston was being considered for the host city in 2020, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
That was a big concern because, there's already a bunch of, like Christian, you saw, there's a bunch of friggin' traffic in Boston already. Imagine if the Olympics was being held here.
Oh yeah.
It would be a lot better if it was held, if they were held, regardless of whether we go with our idea about, or not necessarily our idea, but the idea of having it in all different countries, or if it's still just the one place, to have it in like a rural area, so not that many people are being inconvenienced.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Just a thought.
Any more to say on the subject, or should we go on to South China Sea?
No, that just came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting you to have like a interesting and completely out of nowhere opinion on that.
It developed as we were talking, to be quite honest.
So, yeah. So to the South China Sea then.
Tally ho.
To do something completely not random. So basically, as we all know, China got a ruling they didn't like from The Hague on the South China Sea. And basically, it basically says, China, I know you really think you have like these deeply held like historical reasons to own it, but you don't. You just don't, unfortunately for you. So China basically has said, we're not going to care about that. You know, the precedent has been set that we don't need to care about this, so we're just going to not. And I found that interesting because it raises it like the ruling that was made under, that the ruling the U.S. is saying, yo, you have to abide by. The U.S. isn't even like, hasn't ratified that treaty even. So it really means nothing. Like, if the U.S. doesn't care to listen to it, then they don't need to. Like, and I think, and the point foreign policy was making is, if China doesn't feel the need to, China sees the U.S. not doing it, you know, Russia sees the U.S. not abiding by these treaties, not signing on to them, and they are right. Really, the precedent has been set that, look, big countries just don't have to follow these rules. They can do what they want. So they were discussing on foreign policy, basically, does this ruling even mean anything? If you are subscribing to that idea, does this ruling mean anything? So I guess that leaves you with two questions. First of all, not a question, but a statement I want to make so much more so that, look, when you have people like Trump saying like, yo, we're going to like retreat from the international community in a sense, this is the end result. Other countries, there are other countries as powerful as the US who just don't care, who are going to see what the US does, understand that, look, the precedent's been set, people just don't listen to these rulings. And I'm going to do the same. The other effect is, look, when you go into other countries, like it's sort of like Russia in Crimea. Once you've lost the moral high ground now, and that has ramifications that you're going to have to live with. And I think the South China Sea, if China so chooses not to listen to this, that's an example of one of those ramifications of U.S. foreign policy, I suppose.
No, definitely. I mean, in my planning board meetings, you know, for those of you who don't know, turn off your phone. For those of you who aren't aware, I was elected to my town's planning board, which is a board that deals a lot with planning, planning for development and stuff like that, and permits and whatnot, dealing with that in the town. And one big thing that we were talking about that some of the members warned me about was they said you can't create frontage. Frontage is basically how much of the road is near whatever building you're building, and it's for emergency vehicles and whatnot to get there for safety reasons.
Yeah.
And the big thing is that they're saying is that you can't allow people to make frontage. You know, they can't have their own little road that leads right to their house unless a developer has already created that idea for some big development, because that just has a slippery slope of people wanting to make their own frontage.
Yeah.
And the way how this ties into this is that, you know, the whole reason why we set up the United Nations and the whole reason why globalization and tying in with the international community has been such a big deal is because we don't want something like Hitler to happen again.
Pretty much.
We don't want the, you know, and everything before World War I, up until and before World War I, of just countries just duking it out. Just duking it out for however long, costing however many lives, especially with this advanced technology that we have now.
Yeah.
And we want to have such an intertwined international community so that way war isn't profitable.
Yeah.
Bullying other countries isn't profitable. And to some extent that has worked. But the moment that we have our League of Nations moment, where we say, all right, yeah, you infringed on this nation's sovereignty, or you infringed on all these nations' sovereignty, but we're not going to do anything about it, there's the slippery slope of you can get away with anything. As Christian was saying, it started with Putin, with Chechnya, and with Georgia, and he saw he could get away with it, so he got away with it again in Crimea. And now he could get away with it in eastern Ukraine. Not looking so likely anymore, but it could happen. And now China's following that lead. They got it. They can tell that they can somewhat get away with it with Taiwan, and now they think they can get away with it with the South China Sea. So this is, I live in Massachusetts, as I've stated before, so I can throw away my vote if you want to say. I can vote for anybody. It doesn't matter. It's not going to have a major effect on the election. Bill Clinton, 1992, ran against an incumbent Republican president and a significant third-party challenger, still whopped them in terms of carrying Massachusetts. Yeah. So it doesn't. If I vote for whoever, and I'm going to be voting for Jill Stein, it doesn't matter because Hillary Clinton's still going to take the state, so I don't have to feel really that guilty if she loses. But if she does lose and Trump becomes president, that's really dangerous because not only does he seem buddy-buddy with Putin, but he wants to retreat from this internationalism, be like, yeah, well, if someone invades you, then good luck. And it's like, well, what the hell is that? Before you know it, we're going to have another Hitler on our hands where just within the span of 2 years, Putin's going to have control of most of Europe, or China will have most control of the Pacific. And then we'll get attacked, and we'll be like, oh, gee, how did that happen?
That's a little bit more grave than I would have got to. But
no. But hopefully it doesn't come to that, and honestly, it probably won't. Yeah. And it hopefully won't. But that's the scenario we're looking at. We're looking at a repeat of World War II.
Or at least that's why we've acted the way we have, to avoid such an event.
Exactly. I'm not trying to be Alex Jones here. I'm not saying, oh, they're Illuminati, World War III nukes, blah, blah. No. But that's kind of the road, as Christian said, that's the road we're headed down. That's the road we're, in one way or another, doomed to repeat.
Yeah.
If we retreat from the international community and if we allow these bullies who just want more political power to get away with what they want to get away with.
Pretty much. And as I said, I think, you blamed Putin in a sense for that. And to be completely fair, I think that started with the U.S. in Iraq, as I said. It was that decision that we can just unilaterally do something even if the UN says we can't. I think that's when it started, in my opinion.
I guess so, because, in covert ways during the Cold War, the US and USSR did that to an extent. But, it never really was as overt and as blatant as once it came to the second Iraq War.
Yeah. Pretty much. So that's really what that gets to my question then. Do you think the South China Sea ruling even matters? With the context we currently live in, with the fact that the U.S. decided not to ratify that treaty that it's now demanding China adhere to, do you think it even matters? And I'm not trying to be a China apologist and say they shouldn't. I really think they should. But I think it's an interesting question in that sense.
Well, in terms of legality, the U.S. literally has nothing to stand on. As you said, at least in terms of this treaty, because, again, they didn't ratify it. If we ratified it tomorrow and then started saying that to China, that would make a little more sense. But, in terms of practicality, because that's really what these situations often end up coming down to, I think the U.S. should be doing everything in its power to be saying, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Now, and again, this is fantasy world we're living in, because really the reality of the situation is either the U.S. has influence over it or China does. That's
Yeah.
unfortunately the realist perspective on it.
Yeah.
But the best thing, obviously, the U.S. could do is say, no, you can't do that. We're going to put a fleet there to say
Yeah.
you can't, but we will, without impunity, allow other nations to freely move about. Which
Yeah.
I honestly think would probably be the best thing for the U.S. to do. It probably wouldn't do it. We'd probably be more like, oh yeah, we'll let them do that, but really we rule the sea. We rule those seas.
Yeah.
It would, because that would give us a lot of good PR with the countries that want to do business there.
Yeah.
Which for some reason the U.S. seems to have completely thrown out the window since the USSR fell and the Cold War ended.
Yeah. I find it interesting, though. I hadn't really known this until now, that the entire TPP deal is about trying to mess with to basically get those countries in the region so tied to the U.S. that they can't, because the big problem is a lot of those countries just simply have no other option. China's just such a elephant in the room for so many of them that they have no choice but to work with China and sort of follow what they want them to do, even if they don't like them otherwise. So the entire point of the TPP is to give them an alternative. It's to make the U.S. an elephant in the room. It's just a political game to try and mess with China. It so happens to help corporations, because that's just a nice plus side. But the real aim is to basically, as I said, help China. Sorry, hurt China and try and get the countries in the region an alternative to them.
See, I don't know. I think it would probably be the other way around. Maybe that's just the cynical get money out of politics person in me.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you bring that up, because in that sort of respect, in terms of tying those countries close to the U.S., for the United States, and honestly, in my opinion, a little bit, in that respect, the TPP isn't that bad. It's where we come in with the, okay, corporations can do whatever the hell they want now.
Yeah.
That's where there's the problem.
Yeah. I almost feel as if they're like, hey, corporations, we're doing a big business deal with like a whole bunch of like poor Southeast Asian countries. Do you want in on an idea we have? I almost wonder if like that's how it went down.
Well, honestly, you can't make a kind of trade deal like that, whether it's free trade or fair trade, without involving the corporations.
Yeah.
Like, that's just kind of a common sense thing, because they're now multinational, and they also, they do business. So they're going to want to say, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
The problem is what they gave to them.
Yeah.
But I enjoy that you brought this up, because it really...
It's something we don't consider often. Yeah.
Well, really, I've always said that, if I do get into Congress or whatever, or I become a cabinet secretary or whatever, preferably I'd like to be covering foreign policy, because it just seems to be the one area that really comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
Of being able to see how the different political moves of different nations work and what to expect and all that. And also, I'm very interested in the histories of different countries and cultures.
Yeah.
And so maybe, I don't know, maybe one day you'll be Canadian Foreign Minister, I'll be Secretary of State.
That would border on like collusion, I think.
I mean, that's been U.S. Canada relations for however many years anyway. It doesn't really matter. I mean, Justin Trudeau and Barack Obama are basically best friends, so it doesn't really matter.
Saying goes, the U.S. would never need to invade Canada because they basically already own it.
Pretty much, and it would only take like 5 minutes, because most of you live within.
Right.
Yeah. Well, how many miles of the border is it?
Yeah.
Because you told me once, like, how many? It's like 95% of the Canadian population lives in how close to the U.S. border?
Basically right on it. I can't remember. It's like within 45 kilometers. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, something. Yeah, I thought you said something like 50 miles or something.
Yeah, probably not that close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any parting words on the China thing?
I think I've made my point pretty clear. It's that, like, look, this is the danger I think that we have with Trump, that we don't. It's a nice idea that we can retreat from the international community, or the U.S. can, and then you can just play isolationist. But I almost it's missing the point.
Yeah.
It's missing that you really are better off being part of the international community. It's not, you're not doing it because you're nice. You're doing it because you don't have a choice.
Exactly. But Hillary Clinton, for all of her faults, and foreign policy actually tends to be one of the issues that I disagree with her most on.
Yeah.
I don't mind her sort of hawkishness with China, because obviously people, and myself included, have made a lot of comparisons between her and Richard Nixon.
Yeah.
Not only when it comes to how corrupt they are, but when it comes to foreign policy. And as the saying goes, only Nixon could go to China. I think, in terms of foreign policy, when dealing with at least other countries, Hillary Clinton would probably be a pretty good president in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. That's, I guess, what we'll end on. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Thank you for coming on the discussion. As I said, I'll have all those links down below for what we referenced once we stop the broadcast. And yeah, I'm going to have a lot, because there's a lot of stuff that I have for you. But thank you very much for joining us. Again, I'm working on trying to get more guest stars on here, so hopefully that will happen.
Yeah.
And join us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. And as always, remember, have malice toward none.
Yep. See ya.